What is poppin', my creatures and or commandos? It is me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoiler Show, y'all. This is about to be a breakdown for the finale of the first season of Creature Commandos, so let's just get into it. And the 7th and final episode of this season of Creature Commandos is titled A Very Funny Monster, after the words Princess Alana would say to the bride when the bride would confront her about her true motives. And it's an episode that is primarily centered around telling the emotional and tragic story of Nina Mazursky's complicated birth and life before getting involved with Task Force M. After Nina's mother Lily gave birth to her, she is immediately rushed into intensive care as soon as the doctors see that this new Mazursky baby has been born with her lungs outside of her body. And while Lily Mazursky cries over her new child's defects, her husband, Dr. Edward Mazursky, instead admires the beautiful baby that she was, choosing to name her Nina before resolving to use all of his scientific knowledge in order to help Nina live a happy and full life. And like I mentioned before in my breakdown of the first 2 Creature Commandos episodes, Dr. Mazursky was actually the man who created the Creature Commandos in the comics when they were first introduced in Weird War Tales number 93. Like, this dude straight up turned 3 military criminals into a vampire, a Frankenstein monster, and a werewolf, and made them all fight Nazis and whatnot, which is kind of rad. And later on in the comics, during the Flashpoint timeline, we are finally given a name for the professor in 2011's Flashpoint Frankenstein and the Creatures of the Unknown #1, with his name being Myron Mazursky instead of Edward Mazursky. But that comic book Myron Mazursky wasn't the biological father of his Nina, but rather her adoptive father, who would find the amphibian baby Nina in a remote village of monsters in Romania and take her in as his own. However, Myron did not tell Nina that she was actually born as a monster as she grew up, instead feeding her the lie that she had a terminal lung disease as a baby that forced him to genetically mutate her into an amphibious creature. And it seems like James Gunn took inspiration from Myron Mazursky's lie in order to craft the origin for Edward Mazursky's Nina, who literally did have a life-threatening lung defect as a baby. And then the intro credits hit, with them ending with an animation of James Gunn typing up the script of the current episode like he has been doing all season. But this time we actually can see him writing Frankenstein's dialogue from the post-credit scene at the very end of this episode. Probably one of the first times in comic book media history that a post-credit scene was clearly announced within the project before it actually happened, which is kind of fun. And later on in the episode, we experience another flashback that shows a baby Nina outfitted with a device made by Edward to help her breathe with her condition. And as Nina plays with her green caterpillar toy, we can see through Edward's newspaper, the Star City Star, that the Mazurskys live in Green Arrow's home of Star City, first introduced in 1959's Adventure Comics number 266. And because of this, the Star City newspaper would appear a number of times throughout CW's Arrow TV show. And baby Nina playing with a caterpillar in this moment feels a bit symbolic, as she herself, like a caterpillar, would also soon undergo a metamorphosis of her own. Lily Mazursky, filled with regret for allowing Nina to live a life of misery, decides to ditch her family completely to allow Nina to grow up without having to feel the sting of her mother's disappointment. And months later, Nina would become extremely burdened with walking around with an additional 30 pounds of technology all the time, and her father knew it. So he would immediately begin the process of altering her DNA in order for Nina to be able to breathe with all that liquid inside of her lungs. However, the experiment would prove to go a tad bit overboard and transform Nina into a fish woman who could only breathe with fluid inside of her lungs. So, while Dr. Mazursky did technically succeed in removing the need for Nina's breathing apparatus, Nina would now need a new type of suit in order to walk around. But luckily, her new water suit was significantly lighter and allowed for greater movement and flexibility. And as Nina grew up, she would be excited at the possibility of using her increased mobility to compete in school sports like lacrosse when her father finally decided to send Nina to real people's school after years of homeschooling. Nina is inspired to play lacrosse by a picture that the principal had in her office of herself playing the sport at the very same school when she was younger. But speaking of the school principal's office decor, as Edward speaks to the principal about Nina, behind him can be seen a picture of Italy's Leaning Tower of Pisa, a structure that this principal is apparently a big fan of. But anyway, some time passes and Nina finds a place on her school's lacrosse team sporting the number 5, a fitting number considering how Nina would be mentioned 5th and last when Waller first introduced the 5-man Creature Commando team to Rick Flag in the first episode. And I personally do not even know why anybody allowed the girl with the fishbowl on her head to play a super violent sport where a bunch of douchey kids beat each other with sticks because, surprise, surprise, Nina would get beat and ridiculed by a bunch of douchey kids with sticks who would call her a frog. The idea of these kids beating up a frog with a stick reminds me of James Gunn's first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, where we first meet a young Peter Quill with a black eye after fighting some boys who were torturing a frog with a stick. Man, if only Kid Peter was at this school, because ain't nobody had Nina's back, man. Shit was so sad. These kids were straight up assholes to her, very much continuing the theme of this show, showing us that the human race tends to act more like monsters than the actual monsters do. I mean, we saw it last week when Rupert Thorne's men would murder Dr. Phosphorus's family and attempt to melt him alive, and when those drunk dudes tried to hurt the women at the Can brothel. We saw it during Weasel's tragic backstory when the carelessness of the teachers of Sunny Hill School would lead the kids to accidentally start a fire. A fire made significantly more fatal by angry, trigger-happy adults, mind you. And G.I. Robot would run into a group of human monsters of his own when he was brought to a Nazi rally, and of course, Rick Flag would bag his flag before shag with the mad big bad of the show, Princess Alana, who not only let her people live in horrible conditions while she and her royal knights lived lavishly, but would also try to willingly start World War III just to watch the world burn. Like, I literally knew there was something wrong with this chick when I saw how she treated her grandmother at the very beginning of the series, completely ignoring her and not even helping her eat while she flirted with Rick Flag. And of course, we cannot forget how inhumanely Amanda Waller tortures her inhuman prisoners to do all of her dirty work for her as well. No need to look under the bed because the monsters are truly all around us. And it just sucks so damn bad that someone as pure-hearted and empathetic as Nina Mazursky had to endure such harsh persecutions by humanity. And understandably, the pain of trying to blend in amongst these humans was too much to endure, leading Nina to run away from society completely to live in the waters of Star City as an animal, forced to hunt for other animals to eat. But unfortunately for Nina, someone would take a picture of her while she was eating a fish to survive, which would lead her to becoming Star City's biggest news story overnight. And as Nina's father watches the Star City news report on his daughter, he finds out that Star City has hired animal control experts from Superman's home base of Metropolis, which was first introduced in Action Comics number 16 in 1939, as well as Bloodhaven, the city that Dick Grayson migrated to in 1996's Nightwing number 1 after ditching both Batman and the Titans to do his own thing. And when Nina is captured by these animal control experts, her father pushes 2 cops to try to tell her how much she meant to him. However, just like those dumbass cops who shot Weasel when Weasel was just trying to save his blonde friend, these stupid-ass trigger-happy Star City cops would shoot first and ask questions never when they gunned this unarmed, concerned father down, leaving Nina 100% alone in such a cruel, cruel world. Once again proving how monstrous mankind can be, especially when it comes to people that do not look like the most of them. Meanwhile, in the present, the Creature Commandos reach Princess Alana's castle and make their way to the security room. And while looking through some past recordings, Dr. Phosphorus discovers that the Batman villain Clayface was in Pakistan recently conspiring with Princess Alana. But suddenly, out of nowhere, here comes Frankenstein climbing up the tower after them, attempting to tell them about what Clayface was actually doing. But since Frankenstein has been the DCU's greatest incel for the past 200 years, the bride hit him with that bow 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 and Swiss cheesed his ass before calling Dr. Phosphorus Ghost Rider, confirming that Marvel Comics do exist in the DCU as an established world of fiction. Marvel Studios actually did the same thing with DC Comics in 2021's Eternals film, when Phastos' son would confuse Icarus with Superman, and Gilgamesh would refer to Kingo's assistant Karun as the Alfred to his Batman. However, does this officially rule out the possibility of a DCU-MCU crossover one day? I don't think so. And honestly, I feel like it actually strengthens the possibility more, in my opinion, because all it takes is for one person in the MCU to have a dream about Superman, and that basically confirms that the DCU exists somewhere out there in the Marvel poly multiverse. I mean, if we're using Multiverse of Madness rules anyway. But as of now, these comic book universes only exist as dreams expressed on the physical page. And you know, since the DCU is still in its very early stages, I doubt James Gunn and Peter Safran are thinking that far ahead right now. But anyways, the Commandos quickly infiltrate the Queen's defenses and find her taking a swim in her incredibly bougie-ass pool. And seeing this as a perfect opportunity for Nina to finally do something for the team, the bride encourages Nina to channel her lifetime of human suffering to this one act of killing one measly World War III causing human. And Nina, finally feeling a sense of belonging with her monster friends, agrees to do it. However, Nina's attempted underwater assassination would go horribly wrong when Princess Alana would notice Weasel attempting to warn her of the coming danger, leading to Alana hitting that Uno reverse card and stabbing Nina to death instead, all while a cover of The Doors' People Are Strange plays in the background. And good lord, I have not been this devastated at a death in comic book media in a long-ass while. I mean, not since Hydra killed Antony in the first Ant-Man movie. Like, why'd you have to kill her, Alana? Yeah, she tried to kill you, but, you know, you're a crazy psycho bitch, and Nina was but a lonely people fish. She should be alive, not you. And apparently, the bride thought so too, as Nina was the only friend that she has ever had. But while all this was happening, Rick Flag Sr. would gain consciousness just long enough to interrupt Amanda Waller's reading of Extra magazine to let her know that Isla McPherson was not actually Isla McPherson, which would then lead Waller and Economos to visiting McPherson's house, only to find both her and Clayface dead. Though part of me does doubt that Clayface actually bit the bullet, considering his reputation as being a conniving shapeshifter. But the damage Frankenstein did to him does look pretty gnarly, so maybe Basil really did go to the big clay castle in the sky. Who knows? Definitely a death that James Gunn could reverse if he wanted to down the line, but James Gunn has gone on the record in the past as being against reversing character deaths, so we shall see there. And after Waller shares her new intel with the bride, her rage against Princess Alana would hit its peak, leading to the bride confronting Alana in her royal office after putting all the clues of the case together. And looking through the princess's office, we can see that her bookshelf includes various literary classics, such as 1605's Don Quixote, Wuthering Heights from 1847, and 1796's Jacques le Fataliste. And a little later, we would also see the bride touching a book written by author Mary Shelley, the original creator of the Frankenstein mythos. And we can also see two statues behind her desk, one of a knight with a sword and one of a wizard with a magic staff. A subtle way of showing how Princess Alana is willing to use both the physical force of her knights in tandem with the aid of supernatural forces like Clayface, Circe, and the Creature Commandos in order to make her dream of worldwide destruction a reality. And above those statues are a series of purple amethyst gemstones, which is fitting considering purple appears to be the princess's favorite color. And she would even call that blonde spy knight with the scar her amethyst knight after the stone. And this color theme is also manifested in the princess's holographic globe of the entire planet, where she has a couple locations around the world specifically marked, likely for her future plans of world domination. But what I love about the design of this office the most is how it evokes the bride's tourmaline necklace that she received from her former lover Victor Frankenstein. Because like I mentioned before in a previous breakdown, the bride valued that necklace because it meant something personal to her, not because of its natural beauty on the outside. She saw that necklace for what it was, an act of love. Which is why I feel the presence of a purple gem is fitting for this scene, considering how the bride uses this moment to show Alana that she also sees her for what she is as well. A power-mad, sadistic, narcissistic Disney princess who just killed her little mermaid of a bestie. And so naturally, the bride would whip out the blammer and blast that psycho Cinderella to Satan's ball in the pit of hell before quickly and tearfully escaping the premises with her fellow commandos. And as a reward for neutralizing the threat, Amanda Waller has given the Creature Commandos their own personal living quarters at the non-human interment division, along with new members for the bride's team, which include the Batman villain She-Bat, the wife of Man-Bat, who we saw bullying Nina early on in the season, the undead Egyptian mummy Khalees, who appeared for the first time alongside the Creature Commandos in 2011's Frankenstein Agent of Shade #1, the third iteration of G.I. Robot Jake 3, who seems to be a completely new entity separate from the old G.I. Robot judging by his formal introduction to the bride, and finally King Shark from 2021's The Suicide Squad, which is great because I was wondering where the hell this subaquatic dingus was at following the end of the Task Force X program. But yo, why didn't Waller put him on the team instead of Nina? Like, Nina would still be alive and King Shark would have easily eaten that crazy blonde lady in the pool real ass quick, man. God damn it, Waller. And of course the episode ends with a funny ass post-credit scene that sees Frankenstein saved by yet another old woman in Pokolistan who allows him to stay with her, not knowing that Frank is likely about to shove an iron pot all up in her memories real soon whenever he heals up. That's the problem with old ladies, man. They're too nice. They're too goddamn nice. And that is it, y'all. This season of Creature Commandos has been absolutely incredible, and I am so looking forward to even more DCU animated stuff because, like, it's about time that we've got some, like, canon animated stuff in comic book material. I mean, like, yeah, we have What If in, like, on the Marvel side, but, like, that's, like, multiverse stuff. Like, it's cool to have, like, hardcore, like, canon stuff in universe, in the mainline universe. So, like, I don't know. It's just been a wild ride, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But anyways, you guys can follow me at Mastertainment on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube by hitting that subscribe button and hitting that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. But anyways, I love you guys so much. I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.